we're stepping into the thrilling world of comic books, a journey that's taken us through over a century of artistic brilliance, boundless imagination, and a cultural impact that's hard to ignore. So fasten your seatbelts, because we're about to take a deep dive into the roots of this vibrant medium and see where it all began. It all started with the Swiss schoolmaster, Rodolphe Töpfer, at 1799 to 1846. This dude is usually credited with inventing the comic strip as we know it today, and he was no stranger to pushing the boundaries of creativity. In 1827, Töpfer drew his first comic strip, The Loves of Mr. Vieuxbois. But guess what? He didn't publish it until a whole 10 years later. Talk about keeping us on the edge of our seats. It wasn't until 1835 that his story of Mr. Jabot became the first published bande dessinée, a fancy way of saying a drawn strip. That's a term more accurate than the English comic strip. Because, you see, these works aren't always intended to be just comic. They could tell all sorts of tales. Establishing a chronology of all this comic strip goodness depends on our definitions. David Kenzel, in his 2-volume masterpiece History of the Comic Strip, laid it all out for us. It's a must-have tool for all scholars diving deep into this area. You see, the genre of comic strips didn't just pop up overnight. It grew over several centuries, with its roots going way back to stuff like broadsheets and the print series of the legendary William Hogarth. Broadsheets were pretty cool, but they contained multiple images on a single page, usually showing well-known legends or events, not quite the same as telling a brand new narrative. Hogarth's print series, on the other hand, did tell original stories, but each image was printed on a separate sheet. If we define a comic strip as a single page or series of pages containing multiple frames of images narrating an original story, then Töpfer is undoubtedly the one who created the first such works. But hold on a second. Even though the comic strip explosion has taken off, especially with all the contemporary versions out there, there hasn't been much research on its early history after Kenzel's study. So hey fellow scholars and comic enthusiasts, there's plenty more to uncover and explore in the intriguing origins of these fantastic comic strips. Back in the late 19th century, things were heating up. Humor magazines and newspaper comic strips were all the rage, bringing joy and laughter to readers with their clever wit and satirical content. And in the mix of these early pioneers was none other than the Yellow Kid, a comic strip created by the creative genius Richard Foucault in 1895. This dude's way of telling stories with a dash of humor and killer visuals set the stage for the future evolution of comic books. Now let's leap forward to the early 1930s. A recognizable comic book started to take shape. Famous Funnies in 1933, published by the folks at Eastern Color Printing. Sure, it wasn't all original content, but it played a crucial role in carving out a unique identity for comic books. But hold on tight, because the true game changer came storming like a lightning bolt in 1938. That's right. Action Comics #1 hit the stands, and boy, it shook the comic book world to its core. Who's responsible for this epicness? None other than the dynamic duo of Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, who introduced the iconic character we all know and love, Superman. That one issue marked the dawn of the golden age of comics. And trust me, that unleashed an army of superheroes like you wouldn't believe. From the late 1930s to the early 1950s, we found ourselves in the glorious golden age of comics. Batman, Wonder Woman, Captain America, they were soaring high, captivating the hearts of readers across the globe. It was like a heroic fever dream, and two comic book giants emerged to steal the show. DC Comics and Timely Comics, which later became the legendary Marvel Comics. These folks were serving up some serious superhero awesomeness, bringing hope and optimism during some tough times, like the Second World War. Now, fast forward to the 1950s. The superhero genre hit a bit of a rough patch, but hey, don't count him out just yet. The early 1960s swooped in, and DC Comics made a heroic comeback with the Flash revamp, giving rise to the Silver Age of comics. Superheroes were back with a vengeance, and over at Marvel Comics, the visionary Stan Lee was causing a creative whirlwind. Lee was all about breaking boundaries and gave us a whole new breed of heroes, flawed, relatable, and dealing with everyday struggles. Spider-Man, the X-Men, the Fantastic Four. These characters had us hooked, line and sinker. And Marvel, my friends, was riding the wave of success. When the 1970s and 1980s rolled in, comic books went through a wild metamorphosis during the Bronze Age. This was a time when comic books tackled real-world issues head-on and embraced darker, deeper storylines. We're talking about masterpieces like Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns and Alan Moore's Watchmen. Brace yourselves, folks, because these works catapulted comic books into the realm of serious literary expression. And let me tell you, this medium was no child's play anymore. But wait, the 1990s were a roller coaster ride for the comic book industry. Market speculation and a speculator crash hit like a tsunami, but fear not. Key events like the death of Superman still managed to grab mainstream attention. Those superheroes sure know how to keep us on the edge of our seats. And finally, we arrived at the 21st century, bringing along a whole new chapter in comic book history. The medium embraced the digital age, and comic books opened up to a worldwide readership like never before. It was a time of diversity, inclusivity, and colorful characters and stories. Superhero movies and TV shows became all the rage, blasting comic book characters into the hearts of people all around the globe. And hey, let's not forget, comic books aren't just about superheroes. They've explored horror, romance, science fiction, and fantasy. The independent and underground comic scene thrived, offering unique perspectives and artistic expression like you wouldn't believe. So there you have it, the captivating journey of comic books. It's a tale of resilience, creativity, and limitless imagination. From its humble beginnings in humor magazines and newspaper strips to the global phenomenon it is today, comic books continue to enchant and inspire generations. And guess what, my friends? The adventure is far from over. With each turn of the page, new stories, new characters, and new worlds await. So, my fellow Yes Story enthusiasts, go ahead, dive in, and let your imagination run wild. If you like this comic book saga, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and share the love with your fellow comic book aficionados. Keep exploring, and until next time, stay curious.